U.S. officials are imposing new travel restrictions today to prevent the Omicron variant of the coronavirus from spreading into the country. Non-U.S. citizens from South Africa and 7 other neighboring countries are no longer allowed to enter the U.S. This action comes one day after the new strain was detected in Canada. This marked its first identification in North America. President Biden held a press conference earlier today to discuss the spread of the variant.
This variant is a cause for concern, not a cause for panic. We have the best vaccine in the world, the best medicines, the best scientists, and we're learning more every single day. And we'll fight this variant with scientific and knowledgeable actions and speed, not chaos and confusion.
CBS News' Natalie Brand has more on the Omicron variant and why U.S. officials believe travel bans are necessary.
President Biden spent the morning huddled with his COVID response team discussing the newly discovered Omicron variant.
The things that we don't know right now is whether the people who do get infected have a severer form of the disease or whether it's a light disease or somewhat the same as Delta.
Today is the first day of travel restrictions in the United States, keeping non-U.S. citizens from entering the country from South Africa and 7 other nations. But the variant has spread well beyond southern Africa, reaching at least 14 countries, including our neighbor to the north, Canada.
If it's not here already, it's going to get here. The reason you do a travel ban is not that you think naively that you're going to keep it out, but it buys you a couple of weeks.
The administration's top health officials spent Thanksgiving weekend coordinating with South African scientists to learn just how dangerous this new variant may be.
Mostly what we know now is its rapid spread. It has certainly, in just the space of 2 or 3 weeks, become what appears to be the dominant variant in South Africa.
Omicron contains more than 30 mutations to its spike protein, prompting concerns from some it could be vaccine resistant. Vaccine manufacturers say it will take about 2 weeks to learn whether or not their drugs work against Omicron. Despite that, health officials say now is the time to get vaccinated or boosted. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
Joining us now from New York City is Dr. W. Ian Lipkin. He's a John Snow Professor of Epidemiology and the Director of the Center for Infection and Immunity at Columbia University. Dr. Lipkin, welcome. So overnight, Canada detected 2 cases of the Omicron variant. Is it safe to assume that the variant is already here in the United States?
I think it's quite likely it's already here in the United States.
So we're hearing then from doctors and scientists like Dr. Fauci that we should know more in about 2 weeks about how transmissible this variant is, how sick it makes people, and most importantly, whether the vaccines we have now work against it. Does that sound about right to you? Why does it take that long, and how do we determine the answers to these questions?
There was a meeting this morning of over 400 scientists from around the world convened by the World Health Organization to review what our priorities are for the research to figure out whether or not people who've been vaccinated with existing vaccines have good immunity or don't, what animal models might be developed to test various strategies to prevent disease or to treat people who become infected. And I think it's important for people to realize that we're only just being able to grow this virus, which is one of the things we need to be able to do in order to figure out whether or not these interventions are going to be useful. Now, as you pointed out earlier in the broadcast, there are many mutations in the protein that attaches to cells, known as the spike protein. We predict, therefore, although this is speculative, that some of the drugs that we have, like the monoclonal antibodies, may not be effective. There is concern about the efficacy of the vaccines. People should nonetheless realize that in addition to the antibodies we all know about, there are other responses by cells called T cells that can be very important in reducing the severity of disease. So even if the monoclonal antibodies fail us, there's good reason to believe, as you've heard from President Biden and Anthony Fauci, that in fact the vaccines will still be effective. That is really our best approach right now.
Yeah, a lot of unanswered questions that are making people nervous, but I guess we just have to wait and see. There's no way to skip ahead. So, doctor, according to a recently published Reuters report, a South African doctor said symptoms of the variant are so far mild among patients. Do you believe this is a positive sign, or is it simply too soon to draw any conclusions?
This virus throws us curveballs. I'd hate to say that all we're going to see is mild disease and then find out that that's not the case. I think it's premature for us to make a call at this point.
All right. And earlier today, we did hear President Biden say the country will accelerate the development of new vaccines if that proves necessary. How long do you think it could take to get these new vaccines out? And is he talking about new formulas, or is he just talking about boosters? And what could that mean for Americans that are already vaccinated?
We're talking about boosters that are specifically designed to target this new variant. And I think it's important to be proactive. But first realize that with these RNA vaccines and the J&J vaccine and all the methods that we've developed over the past several years by investing in basic research, we have been able to turn out vaccines in record time. So we would be looking at a few months until these new boosters would become available. So it's important to think about these as boosters, yes, but it probably is more similar to what we do with influenza vaccines every year, where there are modifications that are made to reflect what's circulating worldwide.
It's interesting because, when I think about the Delta variant, and we first started hearing about it and how quickly it became the dominant variant globally. I mean, do you see that this variant could replicate the speed of the Delta if it's not, brought under control?
So the answer to that is nuanced. I mean, I think that if we look at what's happened in South Africa, and you look at the way Delta took over from the other viruses, there was a curve that sort of went about like so until it came up very, very high. This one has actually gone up like a rocket. So I would not be at all surprised that this virus becomes dominant in some countries in the world much more rapidly than did Delta.
Oh, that is.
But again, we just have to observe.
Right. All right. So the president also said he'll be releasing a new strategy for fighting COVID-19 on Thursday. But he did say it will not include new shutdowns or lockdowns, because he said he believed that vaccinations and mask wearing and, social distancing, that those will be sufficient. So do you agree with the president? I mean, do you think that this variant needs to be taken a little bit more seriously and that lockdowns should be considered to slow a potential spread?
I think that right now we don't know enough about this virus to talk about knockdowns or lack of knockdowns. But he's right. I mean, there's no evidence to suggest that the usual sorts of things we do to slow the spread of the virus, like wearing masks or distancing, won't work. And again, if you go back a year, only 1% of our population was vaccinated. Now it's up over 71%. So if we continue to vaccinate, the probability is very high that we're going to get through this with much, much less damage than people are talking about. And we are taking this very seriously in the scientific community. Again, the WHO had a meeting. There were over 400 people attended this meeting, all of them working full stop to come up with solutions for the problem.
All right. Well, Dr. W. Ian Lipkin, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks.